So today's training is on the summer food service program waivers for school year for summer 2022. This training will be kind of short and sweet, so I don't expect it to take very long. We're really going to just focus on the waivers that are available and just kind of a little bit more of a direction as to what to expect this summer. So our agenda for today, we're going to go over the summer 2022 waivers, and those waivers are the offer versus serve waiver, mealtime flexibility waiver, and the first week monitoring waiver. We're also going to just briefly discuss the waivers that are now expired, and then we're going to touch on the possible COVID instance specific waivers that may be available at some point. So for summer feeding 2022, we do know that Congress has not extended the USDA's authority to issue nationwide waivers. So the plan for summer food service 2022 will be that we are returning to pre-pandemic summer food service program operations. So we're going to have to go back and remember the operations before COVID and the operations that were approved at that time, which required congregate feeding and the meal pattern, and we're going back to those times. That's what we're expecting to see for summer 2022. The waivers discussed today in this training are specific to the Summer Food Service Program, or SFSP. This training will not discuss on the waivers for Seamless Summer Option or SSO. If you have questions about Seamless Summer, you can contact us at the state agency. We also will be posting a memo later today or tomorrow with a training date for next week, where we will discuss specifically the Seamless Summer Option waivers. Seamless Summer Option is only available for school food authorities or SFAs. So any nonprofit or governmental or any other organization that is not a school food authority, the only option would be the Summer Food Service Program for summer feeding. And so this training is going to focus on those waivers specific to that program. So the 2022 SFSP waivers that we are going to discuss are going to be the waivers that we requested from USDA, which waived the requirements that were rescinded through several previous policy memoranda that were issued by FNS. So these waivers that we're talking about are unrelated to COVID, but are related to waivers that were rescinded, and that these waivers reinstate those flexibilities. So these waivers are not are what we saw before COVID. We had these waiver flexibilities in our child nutrition program summer food service application before COVID, and so those are the waivers that you will can expect to see for the summer food service program 2022. So at this time, we have received approval for 3 waivers, and these waivers are the offer versus serve waiver, the meal service time flexibility waiver, and the program monitoring first week visit waiver. In the online application, every sponsor will need to opt in or opt out of each of these 3 waivers. The waivers that are expired and cannot be utilized in Summer Food Service Program 2022 will be the non-congregate meal service waiver, multi-day meal distribution, parent guardian pickup, and home delivery of meals. So the 3 waivers that are available are what was mentioned on the last slide of offer versus serve, meal service time flexibility, and the program monitoring first week visit waiver. The waivers that we saw during COVID, the non-congregate meal service, these multi-day meal boxes that were distributed, the parent guardian pickup, home delivery at meals. These are expired. They are not available for summer food service 2022. Therefore, you should not be planning to utilize these types of waivers for your summer food service operation for this summer. So the expired waivers, the first, what does it mean when we don't have this non-congregate feeding waiver? What does that mean for our summer programs? So we will expect to see applications and meal service operations similar to what we saw pre-COVID. So the children would have to be receiving meals one at a time during a specified time frame that's approved on your online application. The children need to consume those meals in a supervised congregate setting, meaning that children will not be permitted to leave the site or the grounds with their meal or any portion of it. Children will not be permitted to receive meals that are intended for later consumption. So you cannot issue breakfast to children after the lunch service that they are intended to consume the next morning. So that will not be approved for summer 2022. So the waivers that are approved for summer 2022, the first one is the use of offer versus serve. So this is particularly for our non-school food authority sponsors. So these are our non-school systems. You must opt in or opt out of this particular waiver. And without opting in and receiving approval for the use of this waiver, non-SFA summer sponsors, which these are our governmental, university, private, nonprofit, will have to offer and have the children accept a complete meal, which contains all of the components in at least the minimum specified serving size to all children that are participating. So without opting into the offer versus serve waiver, a unitized meal containing all of the components would have to be provided to the child. If you choose to opt in to the offer versus serve waiver, which is done through our online application, then you would be able to utilize the offer versus serve flexibility. But if you choose not to, the requirements for each meal are listed here. So for breakfast, the students would have to be offered and accept all 3 components at breakfast, and they must be offered and accept all 4 components and the 5 food items that are offered for lunch. There are a few exceptions to this rule. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, I think I got muted somehow. Not really sure how that happened. Helen, since you're on here sending me messages, what was the last, could you hear anything, or do I need to start back at the beginning? For anybody, if y'all have, you could send a comment. Okay, it's just the last screen. Okay, so I'm not sure how that happened, but somehow I got muted. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so I have no idea how that happened. Okay, so Here, there are a few exceptions to the rule of providing a complete unitized meal. And these would be if a child has a diet order on file that requires a component substitution. So if a child has a diet order on file and you are providing 100% fruit juice in place of cow's milk due to some type of food allergy, then that would be an exception to this unitized meal requirement. But other than that, without the use of the offer versus serve waiver, all children would have to be offered and accept the complete unitized meal, which would be all 3 components at breakfast and all 4 components with 5 food items offered at lunch. So if a sponsor requests and receives approval for the use of the offer versus serve waiver in summer 2022, then they can apply the offer versus serve option to one or both of the meal services offered. And you would indicate this in your facility application on page 3. So in addition to opting in to the waiver on the waiver tabs, you would also have to indicate in each of the facility level applications if you will be utilizing offer versus serve for one or both of the meals you're offering. So if approved for use of offer versus serve, it can be applied to breakfast and or lunch and or supper. Offer versus serve is not an option for any snack meal service offered. So sponsors are always required to offer at least 2 snack components and at least the minimum specified quantity for each. So please be reminded that if you are approved to utilize the offer versus serve waiver, the sponsoring organization's administrator are responsible for ensuring that the online SFSP application reflects how and where OVS is being utilized. So this would mean which meal types it's going to be available for, at which sites it's going to be used. You also need to ensure that site level staff are trained on the use of offer versus serve. So they also need to understand the meals in which it is being offered, how to recognize a reimbursable meal when utilizing offer versus serve, and also that the menu being offered still contains all of the required components in the minimum specified quantities. So that would be with at least 1 or more serving of fruit or vegetable, or bread or grain, or 1 full serving of meat alternate added to the breakfast menu when offer versus serve is applied. So there would need to be an additional item offered at breakfast if utilizing offer versus serve. The second waiver that is available for summer 2022 is the meal service time flexibility. So without opting in and receiving approval for this waiver, all SFSP sponsors, regardless of mealtime, would be held to a set maximum length of time allotted per meal. The adherence to SFSP regulations would be required, which stipulate that for breakfast and or a snack, meal services cannot exceed 1 hour in length at any site on any given day. For lunch and or supper meal services, they cannot exceed 2 hours in length at any site on any given day. School Food Authority or school sites sponsoring SFSP sponsoring organizations are also subject to these requirements if the sponsor decides not to opt in to the meal service time flexibility. If the sponsor chooses to opt in to this waiver, the Child Nutrition Program website will automatically grant the sponsor user with flexibilities that allow them to override the timing limitations at any and all of the sites that they operate. The sponsor could then customize the start and end time for meal services at each facility that it intends to operate through the online application, and the system will allow for the rules to be broken when needed. So an example of this would be at site A, if breakfast meal service is from 7:30 to 9, that is greater than an hour in length, which by regulation, breakfast could not be more than an hour in length. With the use of this meal service time flexibility that is opted into, the system would then allow you to set the time of 7:30 to 9, which is 1 hour, 1.5 hour in length, which is longer than that regulated time. Could also have another site that has a breakfast meal service from 8 to 10, which is 2 hours, and the system will allow you to put those times in that exceed that timing limitation if you have opted in to this waiver. And remember, all 3 of these waivers, you will have to make a decision as to whether you opt in or opt out of each of them as part of the online application. The third waiver that is available for summer 2022 is the program monitoring first week waiver. So an opt-in and approval for use of this waiver would allow sponsoring organizations of any type, so whether it be private nonprofit, a school service, school system, a governmental university, any site type, to waive completion of the first week monitoring visit for any SFSP site that is, 1, a returning site, so it participated in the SFSP the last time the sponsor offered it, and the site is in good standing. So they have had no significant findings or deficiencies noted on the last program monitor visit and or a visit from the state agency. Please note that this waiver is not an option for brand new sponsoring organizations. The waiver is also not an option for any brand new sites being operated by a returning sponsor in 2022. So this waiver is only available to returning sites that are operating under the same sponsor that it did previously, and that the site is in good standing. So if you choose to opt in to this waiver, then that would waive that requirement of the first week monitoring visit. So the usual sponsor monitoring requirements require that annually SFSP sponsors are required to complete the following monitor visits per site. The first would be a pre-operational site visit, and this is for brand new or returning or brand new sites or returning problematic sites. The first week visit, and this is for all new sites, no exceptions, and it's required for all returning sites unless you opted into the waiver. And then the first 4-week review, this is always required. It's required annually of all sites, no matter if they're new or returning. So opting into this first week monitoring waiver does not exempt you from the first 4-week review. That review must still be done. It is required annually for all SFSP sites, regardless of the length of operations. So if you're operating a very short 1-week site, so maybe it's a vacation Bible school, you are still required to complete the first 4-week review, and that would have to be done in the first week of operation. So no matter what, no matter the length of the program, no matter if it's a new or returning site, the first 4-week review is required, and you cannot be exempted from completing that waiver requirement, that monitoring requirement. So all of the monitoring forms are available on our website. So you can find those on the USDA SFSP sponsor guidance books, which are available on the USDA website. Can also find those in the LDOE's Summer Food Service Forms book, which is located on our website. It's also in the memos section as SFS 20-47. You can also find them on the website under Summer Food Service Program Forms section. The subheading is Program Monitoring, and you can find all of those forms there as well. So now we're going to briefly mention the possible waivers that are going to be very COVID specific. So what we just talked about on the first three waivers, those are the waivers that are available for opting into for summer 2022. The next two waivers are a possibility, but they are very, very limited if they will be approved by USDA on how they can be used. So if these waivers are granted by USDA, the rules surrounding them are very different from the nationwide waivers that we saw in previous years. So you should not be planning any summer food service operation with the hope of having these waivers available for operation. So these next two waivers are very, very different from the first three. The non-congregate meal service and parent guardian pickup. These waivers are not nationwide waivers. They are waivers that Louisiana did apply for, but to date, we have not received approval for these waivers. If these waivers are approved by USDA, they are to be limited and only granted for very specific COVID instances when congregate feeding is limited. So these waivers are intended to be a safety net if we start to see COVID numbers spike over the summer months. So what we saw, for example, last school year, as we were moving into August, we did not have the ability, a lot of waivers available, and we saw a huge spike in the COVID cases. And so there was a lot of scrambling for us to come up with a solution, or for USDA to come up with a solution as we watched the COVID numbers really rise right before the start of school. The goal of these waivers is to basically provide, a fallback plan if we start to see spikes in COVID cases again. At this time, since none of us have a crystal ball and know what the future holds, these waivers should not be used as planning for your summer 2022 operation. They are not going to be used or available for use as freely as we saw with the national waivers. And these are truly meant to be a safety net if we see that the numbers do start to increase. So the criteria for us to approve a sponsor for these waivers, and this is only once we've been approved by USDA to offer these waivers, the approvals will be granted for very short durations of time, and the criteria for approval will be based on very specific criteria related to COVID instances. So we will be defining very objective standards as to how we define a COVID instance that will have to be approved by USDA in our plan. So once that is approved, then we would be able to provide more information. So at this time, this is just kind of a little bit of information as to what to that you may possibly receive information on in the coming few weeks. But at this time, we have not been approved for those two waivers. And even once we do receive approval, they will not be able to be used as freely as in previous situations. So these are strictly to be used as a safety net if the cases really start to increase in a particular area, or if maybe there's an outbreak at a specific site, and they will be approved for very short durations of time as the sponsor or site work to resume congregate feeding. So in summary, Like I said, my goal was to keep this training very short and sweet, so under 30 minutes, which I think I've about done. So Summer Food Service Program 2022 will be returning to pre-pandemic operations. So the available waivers that require opt-in on the Child Nutrition website as part of your application will be the offer versus serve waiver, the meal service time flexibility waiver, the first week monitoring visit waiver. There are no nationwide waivers available for Summer Food Service Program 2022. They're all the waivers that we saw that were available in previous summers or previous summer that were related to COVID, outside of the 3 that were mentioned above, are not available for use in summer 2022. There is the chance that we may have some possible COVID-specific instances waivers, which will be approved for instances where congregate feeding is limited for a very short duration of time, but we have not received approval for those waivers from USDA. And even once we do receive approval, those waivers would not be able to be used as freely. So you should not be planning your summer food service operations to consist of those waivers. And those 2 would be the non-congregate feeding waiver and the parent guardian pickup. Like I mentioned at the start of this training, we are going to have a separate training on the seamless summer option and the waivers for seamless summer option. And that training will be next week, and you should receive information through a memo later today or tomorrow. So that they're trying to keep summer food service program and seamless summer separate as we move into the summer, just to keep it as simple as we possibly can. If you have any questions, you can contact us by email. You can also call us. If you have any questions and you want to put them in the chat box, I will do my best to get those answered today before we finish up. And then you'll be free to go. So my goal was to keep this short, and I think I've accomplished that. I had a typo in that slide with the phone number, so I fixed it. So our phone number is 342-9661. You can email us or call us with any questions. I'm gonna wait a few seconds to see if there's any comments or questions that have come into the chat box, and then we'll be done. Okay, there are no questions. So I either did a really good job or nobody listened to me at all. So I'm gonna go with the first one because I'd like to think that everybody did listen. If you do come up with any questions, feel free to email or call us. Like I said, we'll have a seamless summer option training next week. We also have a meal pattern training for summer that will be next week. And if you have any other questions, please reach out to us, and you'll have a great rest of your day.